Do you want to win with your money? I see people struggling every single day. And do you know why? Well, for the most part, it's because they don't understand how their money works. The fact is, you cannot improve anything that you're not aware of. That's why I made this series, Understanding Your Money, to help you have a better grasp of the most important financial concepts that you need to understand in order to be successful with your money. Now, I created 30 bite-sized videos teaching you everything you need so you can make the best financial decisions in your life for you. Now, without financial freedom, there is no freedom at all. So make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss any of the videos in this series. Also, if you find value in this, please share this video out and this playlist out because of the fact that I know it's gonna help so many people as we're entering this recession that's coming right now. Actually, I would argue we're already in it. This information is more important than ever, so let's do this. Hey, what's going on, cash flow hackers? Welcome back to the Understanding Your Money series, and today we're gonna be talking about why you need an emergency fund. I think this is one of those topics that I feel like I've asked literally over 1,000 people, do you believe you need an emergency fund? And everybody pretty much says, well, yes, of course, I need an emergency fund, and yet very few people actually have an emergency fund or specifically have an emergency fund to the level that they believe they should have. So the question is, why such incongruency with what people believe they should have and versus what people actually are doing and implementing in their own lives? There's I honestly, there's probably not an area in personal finance that is more incongruent than this topic right here. And I think the reason that it happens based on conversations that I've had with people is because of the fact that, you know what, people are struggling. People are just trying to get by. People are, balancing living their lifestyle that they want, saving for their future. And I think there's also a discrepancy between what you believe you can actually accomplish versus, what you're willing to do to get there, right? And so I use a phrase a lot, is the human brain only allows you to put 100% of effort and energy into something you believe with 100% certainty that you'll be successful with. Now, I know that's a big tongue twister, and definitely don't try to say it 10 times fast, but at the end of the day, your psychology and what you believe to be true and what you believe you can be successful with is gonna have a huge impact on what you're actually going to do with your money. The reason, and so I say that, let me preface that and say, the reason that I think having an emergency fund is so important has nothing to do with you needing 6 months of income, like the people like Dave Ramsey or Susie Orma would tell you. Have 6 months of an emergency fund because just because you need it in case you lose your job and you need to pay your bills and all that stuff. Yes, I say it has nothing to do with that. It's got some to do with that, obviously, because of the technicals of it. But it really has to do with you being able to show up as a better investor, because everything has to be done in your personal finances with the end in mind. It has to be, where do you want to go? Where are you now? What's the gap? And here's what I'll say. It's not just a matter of an emergency fund. And this is, I know we say emergency fund, but here's the bottom line. It's also an opportunity fund. And I think when you start looking at it and stop thinking as much about emergency and you start thinking more about opportunity, it completely changes the dynamic of how you handle this thing, right? So when you start thinking about the emergency fund as an opportunity fund, you know that, listen, it's fulfilling more than one role. I always tell people, the reason I love doing things the way that we do them is because we teach your money how to perform more than one function for you. Now, obviously, if you're saving up money, I'm a big believer that you need 1 to 2 years in an emergency, I'll say emergency and opportunity fund, right? I think you need 1 to 2 years of income in that fund. So if you make $100,000 a year, that means you need $100K to $200K in that fund. Now that sounds like a lot of money, right? Because a lot of people are sitting here going, well, I don't have that kind of cash hanging around, right? That's a big chunk of change. Well, I'm not going to dispute that. Okay, so like I'm not going to dispute that. It is absolutely what I'm going to show you here. This is absolutely the hardest thing to do with your money. This is going to be, and listen, I'm not doing this series. I'm not doing this series for you to understand your money to make you think it's going to be this cakewalk and it's going to be easy. I'm not doing this to try to convince you or like sell you on some like get rich quick scheme and like hype you up and pump you up about something that's just going to create these unrealistic results. This is going to be the hardest thing that you ever do with your money, right? That is my promise to you. And it'll be the most worth it thing you've ever done in your life. Because here's the deal. Have you ever heard of the phrase, anything worth doing is not going to be easy? Well, that's what we're talking about. And when you understand why this is so important, how it's going to change how you show up in your life with your money, with every opportunity and with every scenario, economic environment that comes at you, this is everything. You have to be willing to do this. One of my favorite phrases in life is you got to be willing to slow down to go fast. Oftentimes what happens is people don't think about saving, right? What they do is they think about investing. And the problem is people are investing thinking they're saving, because when we go to school, we get a job, we're told, hopefully, you've heard this, they want you to go to school, get a job, invest in your 401k. And so investing in your 401k, a lot of people are thinking, I'm saving for retirement. I'm a big believer words matter. And so as people are teaching you to quote unquote save for retirement, you're not saving for retirement, you're investing for retirement. What's the difference? I know, because they sound very similar, right? And if you don't understand the difference in those words, then it's all the same to you, right? But words matter. Investment and saving, it's a function of risk. The difference between those two is just a function of risk. When you invest, you can lose. When you save, you can't lose. When you invest, typically, at least in a 401k, it's an illiquid asset. You don't have access to that money if you need it for emergency or opportunity. With a savings, it's typically liquid. You can access it. It's guaranteed. It can be there for an emergency fund. It could be an opportunity fund. Now, a lot of people, this word opportunity fund, that's not something that's a very common vernacular in the financial space. It's something that I utilize, I think, probably 20 times a day, because I think it's so important. And I think it's a foundational component to understanding in people's finances. Now, why do I believe that? Because we know that the market is cyclical, right? And this is so important. You may have seen me do this in another video, but I want you to really dissect this from the context of what we're talking about right now. We know the market goes up and it comes down. It goes up, it comes down. It goes up, it comes down. And I could go on and on and on and on about this, right? And so let's just say this is a 30-year window, right? So let's just say this is 30 years of time frame right here. And so we know that every 10 years or so, that's each cycle is going to last about 10 years, because every 8 to 12 years, we know the market is going to have a boom bust cycle. This has happened for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years like clockwork. And it's not just because of the economy, because listen, they created the Federal Reserve to try to kind of flatten the curve, if that sounds familiar. But they tried to flatten the curve by creating the Federal Reserve. And that worked about as well as the vaccines did, right? And even in creating the Federal Reserve, we still had these boom bust cycles. I mean, the Great Depression happened 16 years after the creation of the Federal Reserve. So what does that tell you? There's only so much you can do. And so what happens is we know if we're going to work for this amount of time, and like let's just say a 30-year period here, we know that there are going to be 3 boom bust cycles, assuming one every 10 years. It could be fewer, it could be more, but let's just say for the sake of argument that it's going to be 3. Now, what I'm talking about here is if we know that this is the case, the reason people struggle is because when a time like that happens and we go down, what happens is because of the fact that you've invested, right? And we'll go back up here, because of the fact that you've invested and you haven't saved and you don't have enough money in savings like this, the money that you save in this period of time, in this first 10-year period, that money that you've invested is not liquid. It's in your 401k. So what happens is when the market goes down, you lose access to that money. You don't have access to that money. But what also happens when the market goes down, and we're starting to see it in the economy right now, unemployment rates go up. You know, you get a person like Elon Musk, who right now just bought Twitter. I don't know how this video is going to age, but like at this point in time, he's bought Twitter and he's looking to lay off a lot of people. Now, a lot of other people, I just read this article the other day, a lot of other companies are looking at what Elon is doing at Twitter to increase efficiency and realizing there's a lot of dead weight, realizing that we're coming into this economy where there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of what we call zombie companies out there that have so much debt, and they realize that the greatest overhead that a company has is its payroll, its employees. And so if they know that there's inefficiency and they could just trim the workforce by 10 to 15% and they can still operate and function and be profitable, or maybe increase profitability, that's what they're going to do. People are seeing Elon do this with Twitter, realizing just the fat that they had to trim off of that company, and they're looking at it. Now, what happens is during times of challenge, when we get into this environment, when the market goes down, unemployment goes up, right? So I'll just do unemployment for UN for unemployment. I got to shrink that a little bit. So what happens is not only do your asset values, because remember, this is money, this is asset values of your investments, those go down, but you lose your job, right? You become unemployed. And now because you don't have savings, all your money is quote unquote saved in this account that's getting obliterated, but now you don't have income, so you got to pay your mortgage, you got to pay your car bills, you got to put food on the table, you got to pay your electricity and utilities. So you start liquidating a negatively performing asset. And so for 10 years, you felt like things were going really well. And then we hit this moment in time, we hit the pandemic. Maybe you feeling like you were getting a little better because of the relief that you had. And now we're coming into this, and now kind of uncertainty is rearing its head on you, and you're trying to wrap your head around, what do you do? Well, I got news for you. I don't know where you are right now, but I promise you, this is something you need to take into consideration. This is something that you need to realize, like, hey, if you're not ready now, there's another cycle coming. And then there's another cycle after that. So you got to do what you have to do to get prepared for it. And like I said, this is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. But you have to be willing to go slow, to go fast. Here's what I mean by that. If you, instead of this time frame, this first 10-year window, instead of trying to invest and take all this risk and chase, like, say, a 10% return or 8 to 10% return, right? If you were willing to slow down, and because when you do this, you give up a lot of times, most people at least give up liquidity of that money, putting it in qualified accounts, looking for the tax deductions, which is really a deferral, not a deduction. That's another video. But the bottom line is they're looking to chase this risk, but the bottom line is because they're financially structured, they're taking on all this risk. My mindset is go slow. If that's you there, let's get into this next cycle. Let's just build slowly, but do it in a savings account, not an investment, right? That way, when the market goes down, when everybody else is worried, you are sitting with capital. And if 95% of the people in this environment are struggling and having to make hard financial decisions and just focused on survival, and you're focused on having capital and you're positioned to take advantage of opportunity when asset prices are going down, now you're able to capitalize and really shoot your wealth up. And that's where compound growth goes. I tell you what, rather than have 8 to 10% returns over a decade and then have this uncertainty and the non-financial structure, I'd rather take 4% during that same time, keep complete liquidity of that money, and then when everybody else is struggling, get 100 to 500% returns during those 1 to 2 years, right? And I promise you, if you do that, you're actually going to be ahead, not because of the returns, but because of the structure. So now let's go back to the topic of emergency fund and opportunity fund. Why is it so important? If we're willing to slow down to go fast, once again, I'm assuming $100,000 household income here. Why do I say this? Because in this time, if this money is all 4% and it's completely liquid and it's guaranteed and you can't lose money, now what's happening, you don't have to worry about of liquidating a negatively performing asset. You are in a position where you're actually ready to capitalize and take advantage of everything that's happening in the world around you. This is why I say you need up to 2 years of income, because you need 1 year for emergency and 1 year for opportunity. Here's the deal. Like I said, this is hard. There's no doubt about it. But if you can do that, if you can find the discipline to do that, I don't care if it takes you 15 years to do it. Think about it this way. Let's say this is a 30-year window. If this happens to you, and this is, by the way, I'm telling you, 95% of Americans fall into this. They do. If this happens to you, and then it goes down, and then you go down, and you got to start over, well, guess what? 10 years later, you start with nothing. You felt really good, but you had this false sense of security in the first 10 years that you were building up and doing it all. It takes one thing that happens in the economy, one black swan event that's out of your control. And these black swan events happen every 10 years or so. I promise you. And it's probably only going to get worse because the compounding nature of the world is compounding against us. And the boom bust cycles are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And, and they're happening shorter and shorter together, right? More compressed. And so from that perspective, when we look at this, I'd rather put myself in a position, if it took me 15 years to get to this number, I'd rather go slow, knowing that 15 years from now, from year 15, if I set my foundation, right? So I do a thing, and I'm not going to get into the whole talk, but I do a thing called the Life 180 Pyramid Talk, right? So if I could build my foundation of money the right way, that would allow me to be a good investor, right? If I would do that, I don't care if it takes me 15 years to build that foundation. When I build that foundation, I'm going to be able to then build investments on top of that foundation rather than having all of my financial risk in high risk assets on a little point of instability that is all based on the world going well. And if it doesn't go well, my whole world falls over because, my high risk assets lose value and my whole world falls over. Versus if I want to invest in high risk assets up here, it's kind of like a pyramid. The top may fall off, but it's really easy to do to hire a contractor to rebuild the top and to give it time to rebuild if the foundation is solid, right? That's the idea here. Financial structure is everything. And the bottom line is, if you talk to Warren Buffett, any good investor, I don't want to just I think people talk about Warren Buffett too much, but the bottom line, and probably myself included, by the way, in that, but the bottom line is, it really just comes down to when you are here and you have the right opportunity fund and you have the right emergency fund, all that does is it enables you to make good investment decisions. You never have to make a decision out of scarcity, out of emergency, out of fear. You're always able to look for opportunity, and you're always able to come from a perspective of looking to thrive. And it's that simple. And if you come at this from the right perspective, and if you you structure your life, and if you're willing to go slow to go fast, and if you're willing to just, maybe take a little longer to do that, and you're willing to just stop having that fear of missing out and stop worrying about keeping up with your, coworkers and your community and your family and all these things about what rate of return am I getting? No, it's not about that. It's about control. It's about lifestyle. It's about flexibility, and it's about being opportunistic. It's about the fact that, hey, if we know that these cycles are going to happen 3, 4, 5 times during our working careers, why the heck are we not preparing for those times? Those are the times, the growing gap. Listen, if I went to everybody watching this video, I said, when do you think the gap, and by the way, this is not opinion, go look it up. The growing gap between the wealthy and the middle class. I think if I were to do a poll of 1 million people, 99% of people would say, yeah, Chris, there's a growing gap between the wealthy and the middle class. Fair enough, right? So if we know that that's the case, the question is why? And when does that gap get bigger and bigger and bigger? I think if we were to go back to the dot-com bubble, 2008, COVID, now, right? Those are 4 times in the last 20 years that we can talk about this happening, and it's happening in these times. So I don't know about you, but to me, somebody once told me, Chris, if you want to be successful, find the people who are doing things successfully, emulate what they do until you have what they have, right? And so if I know that the wealthy are utilizing these times to get more and more wealthy and have more success and to extend their lead on the middle class, so to speak, because listen, make no mistake about it, this is a game. And if you don't learn the game, you're going to lose. And that's it. They're playing by a different set of rules. They have access to emergency and opportunity funds. They are capitalized. They can make investment decisions that are pure investment decisions, not speculation decisions. Most people don't invest, they speculate because they're putting money into assets they can't afford to lose money in. That is speculating, right? And that's what most people are doing because they invest and they don't save enough. And so you need to save before you invest. That's where the emergency fund comes in. That's where the opportunity fund comes in. And that is it. So any questions at all, comment in the comment section below. I know this is a lot, but I'm telling you, this is one of the most important things. If you got nothing else from this, once again, I'm not doing this to try to make this sound easy and sexy. I'm doing this because anything worth doing is going to take work. And if it's worth doing poorly until you're good at it. And that's my favorite. That's what I live my life by. This is not going to be easy. This is not going to be simple for you right away, but it is going to be worth it. It is going to force you to grow and to become somebody different than you are right now to get to where you want to be. That's the reality, right? But it's worth it. And I know that if you really are clear about what you want your life to look like right here, 30 years from now, 20 years from now, 10 years from now, if you're clear about that, whatever that time frame is for you, you just have to reverse engineer it. And I promise you, the only way to predictably get there is to do what I'm talking about here. Anything else is speculation, and you really run the risk of ending up in the 95% of Americans that are not able to maintain their standard of living when they hit retirement or when they want to be free. So that's it. Comment in the comment section below. If you haven't already, hit the bell. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell. That way you get notified when the next video in the series comes out. Until next time, have a blessed, inspirational day. We'll talk soon.